Welcome, Sridhar Ramaswamy.
Thank you.
So I'd love to chat about like where you're seeing AI have the most success within your customers, and then we'll dive into a little of what's making them successful and not. But we all know about coding, we all know about customer support. Those seem to be the ones that gain the first traction at scale. But where else are companies seeing measurable results by using AI across their company?
Hey, Nat. Great to be here. So when it comes to AI, Snowflake is a data platform. So people use Snowflake to bring data from disparate systems. We have a partnership with Workday to share data between Workday and Snowflake without having to copy. So in that sense, it becomes a little bit of a 360 over all of the most important data. When we think about data, we think about things like Google Drive or Office, where documents are stored. But often, the most important information, data that a company has is around things like its performance. How well is the sales team doing? Where customers are seeing a lot of ROI is in reducing friction into how their teams are getting at this data. And then, as May was saying, if you can begin to then orchestrate actions around the data, magic happens. Absolutely, in areas like customer support, those are the easy ones, but we see people doing this on things like observability data. We acquired a company called Observe. What they do is they collect telemetry information from various applications, web services that are running out there, and make it super easy for the on-call person to get at the right data. And agentic AI is great at orchestrating access to this. And so a slew of customers, whether it's AstraZeneca or a small asset provider like TS Imagine, they all are taking this basic formula of reimagining various kinds of work as here's a smart model that can help you think through how to access a set of really important data sources that are often sitting on Snowflake.
And this is sort of the flip side of the question, but I think I would suspect this is going to be the big question on the mind of a lot of companies that are coming here. They've spent the last couple of years experimenting, they've tried to turn things into production, and they've gotten stuck. So when customers say, we tried AI, we didn't see the ROI, what usually went wrong? And given you're a data company, I think I know what your answer might be. But where are companies getting stuck, even when they have good intent, specific plans, they listen to you about having their data organized, where are they still getting stuck?
Well, we still have to work through, in all of these situations, what the ROI is. And we also have to acknowledge that diffuse impact is hard to measure. What I mean by that is, let's say you made getting to sales information 10% faster. The immediate question that any reasonable CEO is going to have after that is, so what? Does it mean that I get to have 10% fewer people? And so making sure that every project has a clear notion of what's the value that it's going to be delivering as it scales, and also what it takes. Many companies end up forgetting things like governance. It's actually quite terrifying to put up a data set into an AI agent and give it to a whole slew of folks if you're not sure that you're managing the permissioning underneath correctly. For us, for example, we launched a sales agent within Snowflake, and it was a replacement for our dashboarding solution. The clear ROI that my data team gave me was, instead of spending $5 million a year on licenses, we could be spending internally roughly $1.5 million on providing the same data to the entirety of our sales teams. It was a replacement. That was a clear ROI for me. And now they tell me additional things like, oh, here is how much time you're saving for the sales team. And I kind of, that's very nice, but there's the hard ROI that comes with it. One of our customers, TS Imagine, they basically augmented this. They had a small customer support team, but they augmented it using an agentic solution that was built with Snowflake Intelligence. What they got, they didn't let any of the folks in that team go. They kept them. On the other hand, they concretely said, listen, now support for complex asset managers that we supply data to is more of a 24/7 thing. I used to run support from 9 to 5 on weekdays. This thing can now run every single hour, every single day. That's a measurable step forward for me as a business. And so these are the things that one needs to work through. There's also worries about things like cost. Our customers are asking for, first, they love the consumption model, which is pay as you go. But on the other hand, they want to make sure that there's no runaway cost. That one, extra ambitious or the person that May was talking about wasn't burning through $5,000 of AI every single day. And so these are some of the things that you need to drive impact at scale. And finally, there's also very much the people change that you have to grind through in every group, where we want people to use different kinds of AI tools. Sometimes it's coding agents, sometimes it's data agents like the ones that we have, or it's even the tools that are provided by the likes of Google and Microsoft. Gemini. I've pretty much started publishing reports of how my exec staff is using these tools. It's a little bit of sometimes naming and shaming, but that's sometimes what it takes to drive actual usage, because people are afraid of these systems. And so you kind of have to do a lot of work to work through the psychology of what does it even mean for people to adopt a product that is ostensibly really great for them.
One thing I heard in there that you said, and it echoes with the conversation I was having with a couple executives on the shuttle on the ride over here, it seems like one of the things AI is really good at is, instead of using SaaS company A, I can have AI build me a replicate. You said you went from 5 million in licenses to 1.5. Does this mean SaaS companies are threatened, extinct, endangered? And what's going to make the ones that succeed able to succeed?
I joke to people that every company at this point appears to have only two destinies, that they'll either become a $1 trillion company or go to zero. It's just a time of just like lots of change. I think, and we also are dealing with two companies in OpenAI and Anthropic that are growing faster than pretty much any company before them. I was at Google. We grew like my 15 years here, ads revenue, and their modest plan is to make 25 this year. And so the scale of these companies, their ability to attract capital, their ability to create amazing products is bar none. And every company, Snowflake included, needs to live in fear that they will just simply get trampled over. And any CEO that doesn't worry about it is like smoking the good stuff. And yeah, I think this is a time of lots of change. I think we don't really know, is ChatGPT going to be that one, or Claude going to be that one interface that we pretty much access all of our other systems, so that bit by bit some of these systems can be removed and replaced by bespoke systems? Or is it going to be the case that someone else is going to come up with an agentic platform that subsumes all else? Or will we just settle into like a different dynamic? At the end of the day, the web was not a single website, or media didn't become just like 2 or 3, even though the internet considerably changed the landscape of what media is going to be. I think there's a similar change that is going to happen with software. I think it's foolish to predict outcomes.
Well, despite it being foolish to predict outcomes, I am going to ask you.
It's exciting to predict outcomes. It's also foolish.
I am going to ask everyone this week, because I think it is another one of those questions that's on everyone's mind, the bubble question. And I do preface that again. I think when we talk about a bubble, we're not talking, is AI real or not? That's not really the question. But it really is an ROI question, that is the amount of investment going in too much to get the returns that investors will expect at some point? And May earlier suggested that those same companies you identified as growing faster than, better than any company in history, that they're the ones that have the most to worry. So my question for you is, do you think there are bubbles out there, and who do you think will be impacted if there are?
There's a lot of investment, and there's a lot, therefore, in terms of expectations when it comes to returns. It's not just in the foundation model companies. It's also in how much people are buying chips. But then if you go one level down, how data centers are getting built. I listened to this super fascinating blog that Ben Thompson wrote about the impact that AI is having on things like power supply in the United States. Like, boring topic, but it's pretty wild what's happening to that area. I'll agree with one part of what May said, which is it is concentrated with a few companies. But the flip side of this is that companies that could be getting investments in other areas are not getting those investments as we speak. And if there is a correction, then the entire stock market, including the valuation of our company, including Snowflake, is going to go down. In that sense, there's going to be a bit of a winter. And so I think it is going to have a big impact if there's a bubble and it happens to burst. But the way many companies, certainly Ryder, certainly me, certainly Workday, end up doing business is, we rent GPUs. We pay the GPU tax for renting it. We don't have to make outsized investments in AI. Yes, there is a team, but it's a relatively modest-sized team that harnesses the greatness that comes from the foundation models. So in that sense, we are not irrational about how we are investing into AI and what ROI we deliver for AI. Similarly, when we go to our customers, we are not telling them you need to sign a $10 million contract and buy this subscription for N number of years. We are a pay-as-you-go consumption company that'll make revenue only when our customers get utility from it. So it's a pretty solid model. And from that sense, there's no bubble when it comes to software companies and AI, simply because of how we end up using these technologies. But I think it's very hard to hide from the macro effects of AI. On the other hand, in terms of like good bubbles and bad bubbles, if this bubble results in a reinvigoration of the power sector, which, as you know, is not something that's been attractive for investments, that's actually a net positive for all of us, just like all the dark fiber that was laid in the late 1990s and the 2000s ended up really benefiting all of us too.
Yeah, so if you weren't a Global Crossing investor, it worked out pretty good eventually.
I was at Google. It worked out really well. We bought so much capacity that was unused. The one final thing that I'll say, at least right now, is the appetite for actually consuming all of the capacity that is being built is enormous. Because the biggest applications that are powered by AI, whether it's ChatGPT or the coding agents, they are delivering enormous utility. And so mostly folks can't acquire enough enough supply to satisfy all of the demand that there is. The previous generation of chips are getting used as well. So yes, at Snowflake, we absolutely use the foundation models for things like Snowflake Intelligence, but the smaller size models, the older generation of chips, are also delivering utility for many other things like doing sentiment detection or translation, stuff like that. So I think this is rather unique in that it's a situation where, at least right now, demand far outstrips the supply in spite of what you can say is a lot of investment going into AI.
All right, so I want to end things with you where I ended them with May, which is I feel like the luxury I get, in writing about AI is to kind of talk to smart people like you and say, what's getting missed in the conversation? If you could have a better, healthier discussion in the industry about one topic, what aren't we talking about enough?
It's going to sound kind of, this is a tough topic, but actually things like interoperability. What does security mean in the age of AI? It's one thing to build an agent, but if you need to go attach some important data source, like we are working on being able to call an MCP server that Workday provides into Snowflake Intelligence, but what does it mean for there to be, for identity to be passed from Snowflake over to Workday? How does permissioning work? These problems have been solved before with things like OAuth. But I think interoperability in general is a little bit of a boring topic. But for us to realize full value from AI, I think it's going to be a big deal. There's some healthy efforts that are going on here, but I think it is going to profoundly influence how much impact AI can have and how quickly.
Well, that's a great discussion, great way to kick off this